Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the AKA Academy Great Debate for middle and high school students. We are excited to be here tonight and to have this opportunity for students to showcase their argumentative skills for you tonight. I would like to first recognize any elected officials who are here in attendance tonight, if you would stand. I also want to acknowledge and give special thanks to St. Petersburg Midtown Campus and their night staff, because over the last 2.5 months, twice a week, we have been allowed to practice at the college. So again, thank you. Each debate coach challenged the students to intellectually engage with relevant material that promoted problem solving and innovative thinking, as well as assisted them in building links between words and ideas that make concepts more meaningful. The goal of the Academy Great Debate is to help prepare students for post-secondary education and to understand that the concept of debating is about language and logic skills, how they can present a structured and convincing argument constructively. The two topics tonight are hot, controversial topics and have pushed students to think beyond their normal comfort zone and expanded their research, critical thinking skills, and public speaking abilities. It even pushed the coaches outside of theirs as well. Recent debates across the country have pushed for book banning and the adoption of politically motivated laws and policies on school curriculum. Such measures seek to prevent teachers from providing thorough curriculum on American history, civics, and government in U.S. public schools, and deny students their rights to a complete education. Tonight, you will hear the middle school students debate on one of the most controversial topics today, which has triggered debates from both sides of the argument. Their question tonight is, should parents or government entities have the power to ban books from school curricula or school libraries? The high school students will debate on a topic that has always been a subject of controversy, discussions about atonement or the enslavement of Black Americans have a long history in the United States. And efforts toward reparations for slavery and racial discrimination have moved forward in some places throughout the years. Adequate, effective, and prompt reparation is intended to promote justice by redressing gross violations of international human rights law or serious violations of international humanitarian law. Their topic is, should the federal government pay reparations to the descendants of enslaved people? I would also like to mention that the views presented tonight are not necessarily the views of the students and coaches represented. The primary goal is to show students how to present arguments in a constructive manner and empower them through public expression to become better thinkers, speakers, writers, listeners, and leaders. Just before we get started, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you who so generously helped us make this event come together smoothly. The participating students, our debate coaches, Ms. Brandy Williams-Miller, Ms. Jocelyn Avery Wright, Dr. James Jackson III, who actually was completing his dissertation while coaching the students, and Mr. James Jackson Jr., Damon Daughtry and the Palladium Theater, St. Petersburg College, Pinellas Technical College, Trevor Pettiford, the City of St. Petersburg Police Department, Family Dental Boutique, the Honorable Judge Moore, and our many other generous sponsors. We couldn't have done it without you. We are able to provide over 6,000 in scholarships tonight. And over the last 6 years with your support, we have provided over 30,000 in scholarships to students. So again, we will now have come up to give updates regarding the building, and then we'll receive an overview of our academy program by the Honorable Patrice Moore and Mr. Bruce Moore. Followed then, we will have an introduction of our judges tonight, and afterwards, the introduction of our moderator for tonight by Ms. Cheryl Bradbury.
Just a few housekeeping matters in case of an emergency, because they could happen. The exits are right behind you. They're to your left, to your right, and to the bottom. If we have anyone that needs an elevator, the elevators are to the rear. In case of a medical emergency, you see the gentleman in purple or see the lot of ladies in pink. If you could get one of us, we would call 911 for you. I did ask if they had an AED machine in the building, and I did not have that answer, but I know CPR.
All right now.
Well, not really.
What you mean, not really?
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here for our AKA Academy Great Debate. I am Judge Patrice Moore.
I'm Bruce Moody. I'm the president of the Ada Road chapter of the Lakeside Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Yeah, but I told you.
Okay. And we are representing the AKA Academy. We are excited to welcome you to an evening of discussion, opposing arguments, and intellectual debate among our young scholars. We are proud of our AKA Academy Great Debate under the leadership of Dr. Latonia Davis, which offers public speaking, critical and logical thinking, a debate competition for our youth. We are looking forward to the discussion and debate based on research, viewpoints, and facts around reparations and book banning, both very relevant topics.
The goal of the AKA Academy is to help your youth develop their fullest potential, set goals, and develop a sustainable career plan. We touch on all aspects of youth development, including education and career development, mental wellness, team building, mentoring and self-care and self-awareness programming, and like tonight, critical thinking and public speaking. We also provide subject matter homework assistance and ACT, SAT college test prep. Besides from the debate program, we also have our Girl Talk and Boys to Men mentoring programs. We have a group engaged in investments in the stock market, and we're preparing for the end of the year showcase and scholarship programs to congratulate the class of 2023.
A special thank you to Dr. Delphania Davis and her committee.
24.
Thank you.
Special thank you to Dr. Delphania Davis and her committee, our scholars and coaches, on the execution and presentation of another great debate program. A special thank you to our primary funders, the Youth Development Foundation of Pinellas County, and the Pinellas County Juvenile Welfare Board, of which I am the chair, the City of St. Petersburg, and our partners, the men of Ada Road Chapter of Omega Psi Phi. If you gentlemen would stand. I say stand. Incorporated. If you ladies would please stand. We continue our creative and relevant activities which continue to engage, educate, and encourage our youth. Take notes and enjoy the debate.
So I have the pleasure of introducing our judges tonight. So if you would stand when I call your name. So we have Dr. Amy Falvo, St. Christ President for Student Life at Eckerd College. Dr. Kenneth Irby, Community Intervention and Safety Liaison for the City. Major Anthony McCoy, St. Petersburg Police Department. Bo Norwood, Director of Pinellas Technical College. In-house counsel for Metro Development Group.
Good evening.
I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for tonight, Mr. Trevor Pettiford. This individual does not need an introduction. In fact, we claim him as our very own. He has been with us from day one of the Great Debate and has witnessed firsthand the growth of the youth who have participated over the last 5 years. I'm speaking of none other than Mr. Trevor Pettiford. Trevor is an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist with over 30 years experience in television news. Originally hailing from Dayton, Ohio, where he started his career at WHOI TV, Trevor graduated from Bowling Green State University with a degree in radio, TV, and film. Trevor has extensive journalism experience. He was formerly with Spectrum Bay News 9. He was also the former bureau chief for WFTV TV in Orlando, as well as worked for WAGA TV in Atlanta, and as an anchor for WVTM TV in Birmingham. A lot of TVs. Trevor's love for AK is also deeply rooted. His mother, Soror Joan Tomlinson Pettiford, and his sister, Soror Tiffany Pettiford McMillan, are both members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Trevor is also a fitness enthusiast and has served as a trainer for the FitWit boot camps in Atlanta. He also volunteers with Men in the Making, and he also serves on the board of directors for the Early Learning Coalition of Pinellas County. Trevor is married to Clay Ellerbrook, who is the principal flutist in the Florida Orchestra. So please help me welcome our moderator, Trevor Pettiford.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We're going to try that one more time. But that was pretty good. I think that was pretty good. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is, again, my honor to be here with you, a part of the AK Academy and this debate. I can tell you one thing. You are about to see Black excellence at its early stages tonight. You are going to be educated. You're going to be inspired by these young people. It's going to be an incredible evening, and I'm really looking forward to it. You know, the debate is so important in our country. Hubert Humphrey once said that, well, if I can get the quote up, it just died. Well, now it's not looking at all. You know, this is so much better when the teleprompter is up here. There we go. Hubert Humphrey once said, freedom is hammered out of the anvil of discussion, dissent, and debate. So this is a part of the American culture. So it's very important for all of us to understand the importance of knowing not only how we understand what we believe in, but the reasons why we believe in it, and even the reasons why someone else believes the opposite of it. So this is very, very educational, and I'd like for the middle school to come up here now to get seated as we prepare for this first debate. Like Dee said, this first topic, should parents or government entities have the power to ban books from school curricula or school libraries? Now, it's important to know some of the facts about this right now. More than 4,000 instances of banned books here in the United States. And here in Florida alone, about 1,400 books have been banned between July of 2022 and June of 2023. So this is a very important topic and something that I'm looking forward to these young people debating. Now, they will each have 3-minute intervals for them to do the debate, the positive, the negative, and the dissent. So I'm going to keep time with you, and I'll be sure once your time is up, you'll hear your copy, and we'll have to ask you politely to end your discussion then. So, with that, let's get started. We're going to have the opening statement and affirmative construction for 3 minutes from Nakia McQueen.
Hello, my name is Nakia McQueen, and me and my fellow teammates will be talking about why books should be banned. Did you know since 213 BCE, book bannings have been a reaction to the power of the written word? Even now, sometimes the government takes it upon itself to ban books. However, when we talk about book bannings today, we're usually discussing a specific choice made by individual schools, school districts, and libraries, made in response to the moralistic outrage of some groups. But this was nothing in comparison to how books have been removed, censored, and outright destroyed in the past. There are usually 3 big reasons books are banned: religion, morality, and politics. Back in the BC era, entire religions and political movements were wiped out. Not how we do it on social media these days, but with book burnings. Or if it was really bad, people burnings as well. One of the earliest documented examples in North America is the burning of Aztec and Maya manuscripts in the 1560s by Catholic priests and the conquistadors. In Tudor England, during the schemes between the Church of England and Roman Catholic Church, depending on which monarch was arbitrarily in power and which religion they followed, the type of religious books you read could get you murdered. This was done, as French writer and historian Lucien X. Polistron explains in Books on Fire, because the lawmakers of ancient China and the Nazis in Czechoslovakia decided uneducated people cannot be governed because conquered people must change the history of their beliefs, like the Aztecs, because only literate people can save the world. A common theme of the millenarian preachers of each era, because the nature of a great collection of books is a threat to the new power. Lastly, the call to ban books from schools curricula is not an assault on freedom of expression or academic inquiry, but rather a constituous effort to safeguard the well-being of intellectual development of our students. It is a testament to our commitment to fostering environments of learning that are conducive to growth, understanding, and respect for all members of our diverse society. Thank you.
With the negative cross-examination, for 3 minutes, we have Madison Bell.
Good evening. You may have heard my opponents say that parents and government entities should have the power to ban books in school libraries and school curriculum because students should not be exposed to sex, violence, drug use, or other inappropriate topics in school curriculum or school libraries. What Nikayla has failed to mention is that these book bannings violate our First Amendment rights. How does book banning violate our First Amendment rights as students? I'm glad you asked. Attempts to ban or restrict access to books in school libraries and curriculum, which are often driven by an agenda to divide communities and isolate viewpoints, undermine students' artistic freedom. According to FindLaw.com, restricting access to any number of books is a violation of student free speech rights and a slight to their public education. As students ourselves, my teammates and I are not saying that there shouldn't be any input or decisions in what we read, but that input and decision making should come from our parents and I repeat, not from government entities and parents of other students. Procon.org says that parents may control what their own children read, but don't have a right to restrict what books are available to other people. Parents who don't like specific books can have their children opt out of an assignment without infringing on the rights of others. In the 1982 Supreme Court ruling on Board of Education versus PICO, Justin William Brennan wrote that taking books off library shelves could violate students' First Amendment rights, adding that local school boards may not remove books from school libraries simply because they dislike the ideas contained in those books. Our opponents feel that parents and government entities should have the power to ban books from school curriculum and libraries because students should not be exposed to what they see are inappropriate topics because they feel students aren't ready to experience that. How do they know? And what gives them that right? Books have never hurt or killed anyone, so don't kill our freedom to read. Thank you.
With the opening statement and negative constructive first one, for 3 minutes, is Brania Stokes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I stand before you tonight as my teammates and I will argue against parents and government entities having the power to ban books from school libraries and school curriculum. Let me first say that book banning violates our First Amendment right, freedom of speech, as you heard my teammate Madison state. Book bans violate the First Amendment because they deprive children of students of the right to receive information and ideas. Banning books can also have a harmful impact on educators and librarians who are under consistent surveillance, which can negatively affect teaching and learning. This major fact comes from the New Jersey Bar Foundation. You thought that was a major fact? Well, listen to this. Many books that are considered to be required reading to educate students about literature and American history are frequently challenged, Procon.org states. Supporters of book bans maintain to limit children's access to particular information and narratives is a means to safeguard them from potentially harmful and damaging knowledge, coming from accusa.org. NYTimes.com states simply banning books because they're too much of a sensitive topic will only harm young readers. According to firstamendment.mts.edu, by restricting information and discouraging freedom of thought, censors undermines one of the primary functions of education, teaching students how to think for themselves. Book bans don't protect students, they limit their learning. Book bans credit culture of fear in society. Teachers grow unsure of what they can say in the classroom. Writers question whether they should write about a certain topic of fear of becoming a target. Parents may control what their own students read, but don't have a right to restrict books that are available to other students. Many frequently challenged books help people get a better idea of the world and their place in it. Books for young people should serve as both mirrors and windows to reflect and represent children and people in our society and world. You will hear my teammates speak about how book banning negatively affects students, our history, education, and life experiences. This topic affects us all. You, parents, you should have the right to choose what your students read and not have to worry about government entities and other parents making that decision for you and your child. Thank you.
Thank you. With the affirmative cross-examination for 3 minutes, we have Lanaya Lindsay.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Lanaya Lindsay. The Affirmative stance on banning books from school curricula or libraries is rooted in the fundamental responsibilities of educators and administrators to create safe and conducive learning environments for students. Here are a few key points. Firstly, the content of books profoundly influences young minds. We cannot ignore the potential harm and inappropriate or controversial materials inflict on impressionable students. Banning certain books ensures that students are not exposed to content that may be harmful to their emotions, psychological, or social development. Secondly, the curriculum should reflect the values and standards of community it serves. By exercising the power to ban books, educational institutions uphold the wishes of parents and guardians who entrust them with the education of their children. This ensures that the educational experience aligns with community values and respects cultural sensitivities. Thirdly, banning books does not equate to censorship or limiting intellectual freedom. Rather, it represents a thoughtful and responsible approach to curating educational resources. Students are still encouraged to engage with the diverse perspectivities and challenging ideas through approved materials that are deemed appropriate for their age and maturity levels. Finally, the power to ban books serves as a mechanism for accountability and quality control. Educational institutions have a duty to uphold academic standards and ensures that the materials used in classrooms are accurate, relevant, and contributes positively to the learning objectives. In conclusion, the affirmative position on banning books from school curricula or libraries prioritize the well-being of students, respects community values, safeguards intellectual integrity, and maintains educational standards. Thank you.
With the affirmative instruction number 2 for 3 minutes, we have Michaela McQueen.
Good evening. My name is Michaela. As my teammates stated, there are 3 main reasons why books are banned, which is either based on religion, morality, and/or politics. Today I'll be discussing book banning on a religious topic. Book banning within religious context has been a continuous issue, often stemming from desire to maintain doctrinal purity or protect adherents from preserved moral or theological harm. Throughout history, religious authorities have occasionally censored or prohibited books deemed heretical, blasphemous, or contradictory to established beliefs. This practice, while intended to safeguard the faith, can stifle intellectual inquiry and limit access to diverse perspectives, hindering the development of a nuanced understanding of religious principles. Furthermore, it raises questions about the balance between religious orthodoxy and intellectual freedom, promoting ongoing debates about the ethics and implications of book banning within religious communities. However, proponents of book banning within religious contexts argue that it is necessary to uphold integrity of the faith and shield followers from potential harmful influences. They assert that certain texts may promote ideas or values contrary to religious teachings, leading believers astray or undermining the authority of sacred scriptures. From this perspective, censorship is viewed as a means of preserving the purity of religious doctrine and safeguarding the spiritual well-being of adherents. Yet, critics contend that such measures can foster ignorance, intolerance, and a narrow-minded approach to faith, ultimately detracting from the richness and diversity of religious discourse. Thus, the debate over book banning in religious contexts underscores broader tensions between tradition and progress, authority and autonomy, shaping the dynamic relationship between religion and literature. Lastly, what I want you all to consider is within Christianity, certain books or texts have faced censorship or exclusion from a canonical scripture due to theological disagreements or concerns about their ethnicity. One example is the Apocrypha, which was written during 200 BC and 100 AD. It is a collection of books and writings considered by some Christians denominations as the canonical and by others as non-canonical. These texts include additions to the Book of Daniel and the Book of Maccabees, offer insights into Jewish history, theology, and spirituality. However, they were excluded from the Protestants' Bible during the Reformation, primarily due to concerns about their theological consistency with established doctrines. This decision highlights the complex dynamics surrounding book banning within religious contexts, where theological interpretations and doctrinal considerations intersect with questions of authority and tradition. Thank you.
With the negative cross-examination for 3 minutes, Elijah McQueen.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Banning books hinders students' experiences to different backgrounds in life. Banning books diminishes the quality of education. Our opponents believe that book bans protect students, but they don't. According to actionlibrary.org, students of color like me and members of the LGBTQ+ community have been affected much more by book bans and challenges, as books about these groups are excessively challenged. Current statistics prove that modern book banning only suppresses diverse literature, public education, and reading rights. As I stated before, book bans do not protect students. They only have hurtful outcomes. When books are banned from school libraries and school curriculum, a highly harmful concept of exclusion and shame is felt by students. Also, when these books are banned for talking about real-life events, it makes children feel like an outcast for relating to those experiences. This is not good for students. How would it make you feel if your student came home with feelings of shame and exclusion because a book that relates to them was banned without any input from you? Not good, right? I didn't think so. In January 2022, Moz by Art Spiegelman was banned from the Tennessee County's 8th grade curriculum, being the true story about a survivor of a Holocaust. The banning of this graphic novel sparked outrage across the nation. In a turn of events, Moz made its way back up to the bestseller as the bans increased public interest in the story. J.C. Urbany, a professor of education at NEU, says that our society doesn't like to talk about bad things. It just shuts down. It's not engaging in a conversation around it, but kids know things. They're very perspective. She thinks it's much more harmful that they have these books and book bans in place because kids need this knowledge, and the adults who are banning these books need this knowledge too. Urbany also says that we should all be engaging in a conversation together. So yes, let's have that conversation. We're ready. Students and adults must practice our First Amendment and right and oppose the ban of literature. Thank you.
With the negative, pretty good, aren't they? Pretty impressive, aren't they? With the negative constructive, number 2, for 3 minutes, we have Rodney Reeves.
Good evening, everyone. Everyone, as we debate about book bans, have you thought about a way we students can stop it? How it affects our learning of history, or how it affects us? Well, we have. According to United Against Book Bans, students may attend libraries, school board, and city council meetings as the band battles are being fought at a local level. This means that anyone of age can vote for books not to get banned. As parents and government entities think of ways to ban books from our libraries and school curriculum, they don't really think about our hobbies and how it affects our learning in schools. According to Harvard Graduation School of Education, if books are challenged successfully and then censored or banned, individuals on their own term and stages of literacy development lose the right and the ability to analyze, deconstruct, and decode the writing, history, logic, illustrations, and symbols that make up a wide diversity of our culture and social systems. According to Book Ban Central, in a survey, 72% indicated that restricting book access decreases student engagement in reading. More than a third of educators noted that book bans discourage students' critical thinking. According to the NCBLA, books help kids develop basic language skills and profoundly expands their vocabulary, much more than any other medium. Moreover, reading habitually instills discipline, patience, and time management skills. Book banning is counterproductive to learning and cultural development. It teaches students that there are books and information to be avoided, resulting in knowledge gaps. Banning books leaves students less able to work productively with other students. It creates a hunger for the forbidden knowledge. This will no doubt create an underground resource for obtaining the banned books, which can corrupt the information received through them. This, according to Quora.com, a number of the books being banned are focused on marginalizing groups, women, ethnic, racial, and gender identity issues. Eliminating these books further marginalizes these groups, when these books have the potential to help them better understand themselves and others. In closing, I want you to think about this. What is the good of random parents and government entities having the power to ban books? It is a violation to the freedom of speech and academic freedom. This is also a dangerous assault on fundamental principles of teaching and learning. And who is most affected? Us, students. Thank you.
With the affirmative cross-examination for 3 minutes, we have Solomon Reese.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Solomon Reese. I would like to restate our affirmative stance of the power to ban books from school curricula or libraries, emphasizing the crucial points that support our position. Firstly, essential to recognize that the power to ban books isn't about limiting intellectual freedom or censoring ideas. Rather, it's about ensuring that the educational environment remains conducive to learning and respectful of diverse perspectives. Banning books allows us to select material that aligns with educational objectives and fosters a positive learning experience for all students. Moreover, banning certain books can be necessary to protect students from exposure to harmful or inappropriate content. Educational institutions have a duty of care towards their students, and banning books that contain explicit or sensitive material is a responsible measure to safeguard their well-being. Additionally, the decision to ban books is often made in consultation with parents, educators, and community members. It's a collaboration effort. It upholds shared values and ensure that the educational content reflects the culture, sensitivities, and moral standards of the community. Furthermore, banning books from school curriculum and libraries does not mean erasing them from existence. Students can have access to these books outside of the school settings under the guidance of their parents or guardians. The school's role is to provide a structured and appropriate learning environment, and banning certain books within the content is part of fulfilling that role. In conclusion, the power to ban books from school curricula or libraries is a necessary measure to maintain a safe, respectful environment. It's about prioritizing students' well-being, respecting community values, and fulfilling our responsibilities as educators. Thank you.
Right now, we will have a team conference for 2 minutes. Okay, if you could return to the stage.
Yes, she did.
We have a final 4 arguments. The next will be the negative rebuttal. 3 minutes with Kaneda Smith. Did I pronounce that correctly? Kennedy. Kennedy Smith.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, Solomon, did you know that by nature, us students are very self-focused, and it is hard for us to imagine different experiences and lives outside of our own? Books that show representation of different people and situations can teach us empathy. Books can also provide representation to students who come from marginalized communities. When parents and government entities ban these books from students, it gives them a narrow way of looking at the world. Students will not be able to understand different cultures, worldviews, religions, and more if random parents or government entities keep banning books that have these elements. While educators work to deliver students an accurate knowledge education, some politicians are trying to censor the truth of our history, passing laws to ban learning from mistakes of the past and erase leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who stood up to racism and changed our country for the better. Students like me and you have the right to learn about African American history and culture. Students need this information because it can help prevent racial and ethnic divisions. Racial and ethnic divisions result in misunderstandings, loss of opportunities, and sometimes violence. Students knowing about their history is a good tool for educating future students of the United States so they can become productive citizens. But they will also know about Black history and or culture. Not only does banning books have an impact on teachers, while veteran teachers have been dealing with censorship in schools for a while, this is something new to student teachers. Osaka Elementary at Branford University shares their opinion on the matter. This student stated they would like to remain anonymous. As a future educator, it is important that we include our students' lived experiences and cultures as part of the instruction. This means educators should be able to embrace their students' identities that are associated with their race, gender, language, and more. The freedom to read and write is almost the only means for making generally available ideas or manners of expression that can intentionally command only a small audience. The written word is the natural medium for the new idea and the untried voice, from which come the original contributions to social growth. Banning books has a ripple effect that impacts the rights of other readers when individuals and government entities restrict children from reading the potential to create gaps in knowledge. For young learners, whether it's a classic novel or a new book that has been banned, banning books limits access and have the potential to leave students behind and some of their classmates. What about you? Do you think students should have the freedom to read and write? I hope your answer is yes. Thank you.
With the affirmative rebuttal for 3 minutes, we have Bernard Stokes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bernard Stokes. Tonight, you heard my team's opponent argue that banning books restrict freedom of speech and expressions. Tonight, I will expand on my team's position that banning books is a good practice and essential for maintaining a safe and respectful society. First and foremost, books can protect vulnerable individuals such as children from exposure to inappropriate or harmful content. Books that contain explicit, violent, sexual content or offensive language can have detrimental effects on young and impressionable minds. By banning such books, society can ensure that children are shielded from material that may negatively impact their development and well-being. Banning books also allows parents to have confidence in the educational materials their children are exposed to, thereby fostering a sense of trust in the educational system. Additionally, the banning of books can prevent the spread of hateful or discriminatory ideologies. There are numerous instances where books containing racist, sexist, or homophobic content have influenced individuals to adopt prejudiced beliefs and behaviors. By banning such literature, society can take a stand against discrimination and promote inclusivity and respect for individuals. Banning books that promote harmful ideologies is crucial in creating a safe and welcoming environment for everyone, regardless of their race, gender, or sexual orientation. Lastly, banning books is necessary to maintain public order in society. Certain books may contain content that incites violence, promotes illegal activities, or poses a threat to national security. By banning such literature, society can prevent individuals from being influenced to engage in harmful or illegal behaviors. Banning books that pose as a threat to public safety is essential in upholding the rule of law and ensuring the well-being of all members of society, inclusions. The practice of banning books is essential for promoting a safe, respectful, and inclusive society. By protecting vulnerable individuals from harmful or inappropriate content, ensure the well-being and safety of all individuals. Thank you.
With the negative rebuttal and closing statement, we have Cranston Cumberbatch.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. By now, I'm sure you've heard plenty of reasons why parents and government entities should not have the rights nor power to ban books provided by my teammates. On the contrary, you've heard our opponents try to justify book banning. The problem with this is that our opponents miss key information in their argument. One thing our opponents leave out are the effects book banning has on students. According to CBSNews.com, Dr. Bash of New Directions Mental Health says, banning books can have a detrimental impact on a young person's mental health when you cut off having the access to literature that features people who look like you and experience the world like you do. In addition, teacher.scholastic.com states that the research based on student-selected reading is robust and conclusive. Students read more and are more likely to continue reading when they have the opportunity to choose what they read. Our opponents are also leaving out what banned books equip students with. According to informationmatters.org, by reading banned books, it helps children to develop a heightened sense of empathy and a deeper understanding of the multifaceted world in which they live in. It also states that it equips children and students with the invaluable skill of recognizing the common humanity that unites us all, irrespective of our differences, and prepares them to engage constructively with the global community they will be a part of in the future. Our opponents also have a misconception of the elements and topics banned books cover. They may only bring up that they contain offensive language or sexual content, but they miss the other topics banned books cover as well. Informationmatters.org also states that banned books often delve into issues related to social justice, discrimination, and inequality, offering readers a window into experiences and viewpoints that they may not encounter in their everyday lives. Our opponents may also try to use age to justify book bans. According to phsjournal.com, children need to know what happens in the world. Eventually, they'll find out about things like racism, violence, rape, and other things that have caused books to be challenged. It's better for them to find out about what goes on in the world through a book than for them to be clueless. One last thing our opponents leave out is the control parents actually have over book bans. According to bookriot.com, parents and guardians are the ones primarily responsible for what their child reads. In addition, the New York Times states that although parents have a right to monitor the media their children are consuming, they can't take away access to controversial books for all children. To conclude, I'd like to leave you with a quote from www.bustle.com, which reads, "Banning books gives us silence when we need speech. It closes our ears when we need to listen, and it makes us blind when we need sight." Thank you.
Thank you, Cranston. Finally, with the affirmative rebuttal and closing statement for 3 minutes, Lyric Party.
Good evening, all. My name is Lyric Murray. In closing, it is essential to reiterate that affirmative stance on the power to ban books from school curricula or libraries. While the concept of banning books may seem contrary to the principles of free speech and intellectual freedom, it is crucial to recognize the responsibility that comes with shaping of young minds and fostering a positive learning environment. First and foremost, schools have a duty to provide a safe and inclusive space for all students. Banning certain books can help protect students from exposure to inappropriate or harmful content that may not align with their development stage or cultural sensitivities. By carefully curating the material available in school libraries and curriculum, educators can ensure that students are exposed to age-appropriate and culturally relevant literature that enriches their educational experience Moreover, to the power of banned books and allow educators and administrators to uphold educational standards and values. Within the school community, not all books are created equal. For some, they contain misinformation or offensive language or outdated perspective that could undermine the educational goals of the curriculum. By exercising the discretion of the books and selection, schools can prioritize the works that promote critical thinking, empathy, and diversity, while avoiding materials that perpetuate harmful stereotypes or ideologies. Furthermore, banning books does not equate to censorship, but rather reflects a thoughtful and responsible approach to education. Schools have a responsibility to select materials that align with their educational objectives and serve the best interests of their students. This may involve excluding books that are overly controversial or diverse, especially in environments where impressionable young minds are still developing their values and beliefs. In conclusion, the power to ban books from school curriculum or libraries is necessary for a tool or educators to create a positive and enriching learning environment. For students, by exercising this power judiciously and in accordance with educational standards and values, schools can ensure that students are exposed to literature that fosters critical thinking, empathy, and cultural understanding. Ultimately, the goal is not to limit intellectual freedom, but to promote a responsible and inclusive education for all students. My team rests its case. Thank you.
I also want to congratulate you all on staying within your time limit, each and every one of you. That was very good. I think that's the first time we've done that. That was very good. So we'll ask you now to leave the stage because we will take a moment and bring in the high school as the judges now finish up their scoring. But as we bring up the high school, I wanted to bring to the stage Cassandra Williams, who will talk about the 2025 Debutante Cotillion announcement.
Good evening.
I'm Cassandra Williams, and I served as the chairman for the 2023 Essence of Ebony Pearls Debutante Scholarship Cotillion, along with my co-chair, Mrs. Renee Baker Boozy. Since 2001, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Upsilon Omega Chapter, in partnership with the Youth Development Foundation of Pinellas County Incorporated, has dedicated itself to presenting a new generation of young ladies into society. The Essence of Ebony Pearls Debutante Scholarship Cotillion is a unique program that seeks to further develop and prepare young ladies for transitioning into womanhood and for making their official entrance into society at a formal presentation. During this preparatory process, the debutante focuses on her social, academic, leadership, and civic development, and is involved in a series of workshops and activities that aim to expose her to leadership training, community engagement, and camaraderie. Our goal is to develop young women through essential life-changing instruction and experiences. The cotillion is also an opportunity to earn educational scholarships. If you're a junior or senior in the upcoming 2024-2025 school year, we encourage you to apply. The application will be released soon, and we start in the fall of 2024. So as a reminder, please follow us on Facebook at Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Upsilon Omega Chapter, and be sure to tune in to our website at www.cuochapter.org for the announcement. If you have questions before then, you can see myself or Mrs. Renee Boozy, and also you can email questions to ydfdebutante@gmail.com. Thank you.
She talked fast. Now I don't know how Beyonce does the costume change, but that's right. You like this now? Yeah. You like the outfit change? All right. All right. Our next topic for the high school debate is, should the federal government pay reparations to the descendants of enslaved people? We will begin with a 6-minute opening statement and affirmative construction by Kiana Chambers.
Good evening. The topic at hand has been discussed over the course of many years, and the question still is, should the federal government pay reparations to the descendants of enslaved people? As we all know, African Americans were enslaved until slavery was abolished in 1865 in the United States by President Abraham Lincoln. Slavery refers to the historical practice of forcibly and unlawfully enslaving individuals, treating them as property and denying them basic human rights and freedoms. It involved the ownership and control of people, often based on their race or ethnicity, and was prevalent in various parts of the world for centuries. Hundreds of thousands of Africans, both free and enslaved, aided the establishment and survival of colonies in the Americas and the New World. According to History.com, slavery in America began in 1619 when the privateer, the White Lion, brought 20 enslaved Africans ashore in the British colony of Jamestown, Virginia. The crew had seized the Africans from the Portuguese slave ship São João Batista. Africans held as slaves in the 17th and 18th centuries were mostly employed on the southern coastal plantations of tobacco, rice, and indigo, which stretched from Georgia to the Chesapeake Bay colonies of Maryland and Virginia. According to Brookings.com, in 1861, the value placed on cotton produced by enslaved blacks was $250 million. Slavery enriched white slave owners and their descendants, and it fueled the country's economy while suppressing wealth building for the enslaved. The United States has yet to compensate descendants of enslaved Black Americans for their labor. Reparations refers to the act of making amends or providing compensation for past wrongs or damage inflicted on a person or group. When thinking of a snapshot of slavery in this country, it covered over 400 years from the mid-15th century to 1865. From 1865 to 1965, African descendants in this country were brutalized and marginalized with Jim Crow laws that prevented people to truly prosper in this country. Jim Crow laws were a series of state and local laws in the United States that enforced racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans. Since 1965, when integration finally started in this country and the descendants of slaves and white people started merging as a society, the trauma and deliberate growth effects of slavery remain apparent. In the early 1990s began the discussion of reparations in this country that continues today with no real solution, and it must be solved by the end of 2024. Why? Let us again look at some snapshots of history to establish a baseline. Slavery in its basic intent was a free labor force to drive the farming economy of the South. There is no debate on this. Slaves endured slave health deficiencies from long work days, physical brutality by the slave owner, and no true caring for illnesses or injuries. Slavery mental anguish was above reproach. Slave owners created an atmosphere of fear, of mental torture of being second-class citizens compared to farm animals, brainwashed to believe they are not fully human, all to provide free labor and perpetually. The results of such a torture produced a robust economy in this country, the United States. According to ScienceDirect.com, over half of the U.S. economy was derived directly or indirectly from cotton, which in 1836, for example, was equated to 600 million of the 1.2 billion economy the country had. Even if one would want to diminish the value of certain facts, and even if we lower that percentage to 30%, if you multiply at least 200 years of that and amortize, inflation would result in over $74 billion impact from 1665 to 1865 in today's dollars on the backs of slaves. This country has several examples of reparations for actions of people of this country much less severe. One main example, during World War II, under the guise of suspicion, all Japanese Americans were arrested and put into camps to curtail the theory of an inside attack on the country. In 1988, in a civil case between the U.S. and Fred Korematsu, almost 50 years after the end of World War II, presented a case on a Japanese American who fought against the idea of American encampments of Japanese Americans, who was jailed, lost an initial court case, but then won a Supreme Court case on this matter, which opened the door to reparations for his people of the 120,000 incarcerated during the war, and laid the legal cornerstone for the 1988 Civil Liberties Act. The officially apologized for the wrongful incarceration, conferred $20,000 in individual reparations, and created a public education fund. The $20,000 in 1988 dollars awarded to over 82,219 Japanese Americans equates to over $4 billion, about $12 per person in the U.S. in 2024. If this country can acknowledge through this system the wrongful arrest of the people and award them over $4 billion in today's dollars, then I am sure we can discuss the $50 million to the sentence of slaves. Thank you.
With the negative cross-examination for 3 minutes, we have Emerson Jackson.
Good evening. I respectfully disagree with the concept of providing responsibility reparations to the slaves for the following of 3 reasons. First, it is too difficult to determine true ancestral ties to defendants as many races are intermixed. Second, the challenges of determining how much each descendant should receive would be incredibly hard in every area of the country. And thirdly, and most importantly, who would pay for it? To my first point, the first slaves were brought to our country in 1619. So many of our ancestors immediately became breeders for the trade, and their predominantly white slaveholders again, in most cases, did not claim. How would we create a fair system to determine who has enough black blood to get paid? Over time, this problem of mixing the races has become more challenging, and depending on the state you live there, some African Americans had economic opportunities while others did not. In fact, some African Americans that are descendants of Tulsa are wealthy, while the law in most of the country consider you black with one drop of blood. How can we be sure that those who suffered most under the slave trade to the present are properly compensated? Second, Evanston, Florida is a good test case for how reparations works. The city voted to give a small population money for the area's past crimes. According to their records, the first phase involves giving 16 residents $25,000 each for home repairs or property costs, and Evanston reparations take the form of grants of $25,000, which can only be used for house repairs, to pay down a mortgage, or as down payment on a house. But is this enough, and does it really address the problem of issues that occurred 400 years ago that remain a problem today and contribute to housing, employment, and mobility discrimination? The City Council approved a total amount of $400,000. That does not seem like much for 400 years. It is an insult. Finally, no one wants to pay for reparations. If the city voted to give its money back that is coming from all taxpayers, some who are poor or come from minority groups who have challenging historical backgrounds as well. The money and time spent trying to figure this out would be better spent in creativity, creating better policies to support our descendants who are below the poverty line and need modern solutions to a real problem. Instead of trying to push politicians on an issue today they will not budge on, we should push them to make them stronger. A stronger policy for people who are poor.
Thank you. With the opening statement and negative constructive for 6 minutes, we have Jordan Moore.
Good evening. As we approach almost 160 years since the freeing of the enslaved,
The question of reparations are still just as prevalent. However, arguments are now focused on a spectrum of complex moral issues. How might one identify the appropriate recipients of reparations? Specifically, who would pay? Is there some continuing debt or other obligation? Why should people who committed no wrong be responsible for paying reparations? Will reparations make racial reconciliation more difficult by angering payers? To fully correct the atrocities that were committed during the transatlantic slave trade, reparations must not only contend with past evils and the current social and political injustices that stem from those evils, but must also dismantle, or at least attempt to dismantle, coloniality itself, since colonialism is the true root and catalyst for the transatlantic slave trade. Yamira C. suggests in her academic article, Reparations, Decolonizing Diasporas, published in the Northwestern University Press, that any reparation that does not address coloniality and settler colonialism is a failed reparation. Now, let's take a further look into what colonialism truly is and what it takes to completely dismantle it. Colonialism is defined as a historical and ongoing global project where settlers continue to occupy land, dictate social, political, and economic systems, and exploit indigenous people and their resources. The community-based Global Learning Collaborative Network says that colonialism's influence spans across so many aspects of our lives. These include, but are not limited to, capitalism, racism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. The fact that many of us here today are either Christian, Catholic, or Protestant is because of colonialism. The mere fact that we're currently speaking English to each other right now is because of colonialism. We have to realize that these systems of oppression diminish everyone's humanity, not just the oppressors. Once we deconstruct these aspects of colonialism, we can begin to decolonize. Now, I could just be a realist saying this, but reparations will not fix all those problems that I just mentioned that we face in our current society. To truly deconstruct colonialism, we have to decenter the narrative by which settlers romanticize indigenous beliefs and service culture. We have to deconstruct settler-imposed systems, some of them which I mentioned earlier, that continue to oppress not only Black people, but brown and indigenous people. With existing programs and plans for reparations, such as the 10-point reparations program created by the National African American Reparations Commission, includes points to demand things such as land and funds for social and economic development of the descendants of the enslaved people. Who's to say that these programs will last and develop to actually dismantle colonial systems, which would then help deconstruct colonialism? This is better than just descendants of enslaved people and the federal government. This involves the participation of entire countries. Not only is decolonization a physical task, it's a mental one too. Despite the great social and economic progress Black Americans have made in this country over the past half-century, most leaders of the reparations movement at the base encourages minorities to believe that they are really lost souls. The leaders of the movements do not talk about how such a distant crime has led to specific damages in the present lives of most minorities. For them, feelings of victimization in general, not damages in specific, are the point. So, they maintain that minorities ought to blame the missed opportunities of their lives on the slavery that transpired centuries ago, as though their pain is interchangeable with those endured by slaves. Decolonizing your mindset is crucial in breaking free from the psychological state of double consciousness, a term coined by W.E.B. Du Bois that involves Black folks being forced to view themselves through the eyes of others, particularly those of the dominant white culture, and reclaim your own identity. Decolonizing your mindset involves a willingness to shift your perspective, question the status quo, and commit to learning about and valuing diverse cultures and perspectives. It is only up to ourselves, not the federal government, to lift each other up and break from that victim mindset. By actively engaging in this process of decolonization, we can begin to empower ourselves and each other, rather than waiting for external forces to bring about change. It requires a conscious effort to unlearn harmful beliefs and behaviors that have been ingrained in us, and to instead embrace our own identities and cultures with pride and resilience.
By taking ownership of our narratives and challenging the systems of oppression that seek to divide us, we can work towards a more inclusive and equitable society for all. When speaking on the topic of reclaiming what has originally belonged to African Americans in terms of American culture, Beyoncé looks at her past through an anthropological lens in her most recent album, Cowboy Carter. She quotes, "Goodbye to what has been, a pretty house that we never settled in, a funeral to bare-worded friends, will be the ones to purify our father's sins. American Requiem. The big ideas are buried here. Amen."
With the affirmative cross-examination for 3 minutes, we have Jasmine Everhart.
Good evening, everyone. While you have heard our opponents' opening statements against the idea of reparations, their position cannot gloss over the long overdue pay African Americans deserve. And this starts with slavery. So let us go back in time of slavery. According to www.procon.org, slavery left African American communities at the mercy of the slave health defect, which should be addressed with reparations. The slave trade introduced many European diseases to the African and indigenous population. These European diseases increased on the long journey to North America on slave ships, which caused many slaves to fall ill and even die from diseases like syphilis, which eventually were tested on many Black men, women, and children without reparations. According to www.procon.org, there is already precedent for the paying of reparations to the descendants of slaves and to other groups by the U.S. federal government, U.S. state, and local governments and international organizations. According to WashingtonPost.com, Native Americans were also paid $105 million as a nation in 1980 and $1.3 billion in 1978. Jews were also paid reparations. Jews were paid $86.8 million, which is $207 per person, between 1945 through 2018. Although my opponents do believe that the descendants of enslaved individuals shouldn't get reparations due to them not being the ones who are working in the fields, but let us dig deeper into the New Deal policy. According to www.dictionary.com, says that the New Deal policy is the principles of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, especially those who advocated under the leadership of President Franklin D. Roosevelt for economic recovery and social reforms. So, who benefited from the New Deal policy, you may ask? Well, the New Deal policy helped many white soldiers get good colleges and good homes, which Black people were excluded from Social Security, which African Americans, farmers, were excluded from as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. With the affirmative construction number 2, for 5 minutes, we have Brianna Chambers.
Good evening, everyone. As my teammates have defined what reparations are, I'm going to dive further into detail on why they are necessary. Why are they necessary? What do we benefit from these reparations? Well, reparations will compensate Black Americans for the lost wages and suffering for their ancestors, which were American slave laborers. Another reason why reparations would be necessary would be that it would involve a national apology, rights to cannabis industry, financial payment, social services, benefits, and land grants. These benefits will be seen as a significant impact to those who are descendants of slaves. An example would be the slave trade. The slave trade was a dark and tragic period in history. It involved the capture of transportation and enslavement that around 12.5 million Africans were sold into slavery. About 10.7 million survived, with about 40% of them going to work on sugarcane plantations in Brazil. The biggest slave trade was in West Central Africa. There are current proposals across the country on the matter of reparations for descendants of slavery. For an example, on March 22nd, 2021, the city of Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to implement a $10 million program, reparations program. I'm sorry. According to in the next 10 years to ensure home ownership. They plan to fund this with a 3% annual tax on recreational marijuana. Reparations further justified because the federal government benefited from slavery. Under the Fugitive Slaves Act of 1793 and 1850, U.S. Marshals were mandated to recover slaves who escaped and return them to enslavement. From 1798 to 1802 and 1813 to 1860, the United States Treasury collected trades and slaves as one of the chief sources of revenue, along with taxes on land and houses. Many slave states collect as much as 2% of their valuation of each enslaved person per year as a tax. History understated how much of the United States government has used slavery to generate revenue during the antebellum period. As a starting point for reparations, it seems logical to believe that the revenue generated from taxes on enslaved people could be returned to their descendants. Although this has happened, there are other places that have benefited from this too. Some of America's oldest colleges and universities, including Harvard, Yale, Brown, the University of Georgia, Virginia, Columbia, and Princeton, were built by enslaved workers and partially funded by the slave trade. Also, Georgetown University recently began offering scholarships to the descendants of the people it enslaved, and the University of Virginia is building their memorials to enslaved people who lived and worked on this campus. Other institutions have yet tried to make amends for their role in slavery. There are also other countries that have implemented these reparation programs. An example being Germany, which implemented reparations programs for Holocaust survivors and their descendants. These programs aim to provide financial compensation and as well as support for healthcare and social services. Another example would be the government of Colombia paid reparations to the citizens following a war that spanned 5 decades, according to reportsrules.org. $23 million was allocated to victims of murder, rape, and other violence committed by rebels and right-wing paramilitary groups and armed forces. The reparations totaled to $85 million, and the commissioner originally recommended the government pay $360 million. There are more countries who have paid reparations to victims out here, so why should it be a problem for America to start paying more reparations to the descendants of slaves? Slavery reparations can mean many things other than just cash. Other than cash payments to Black Americans, proposals have included an extensive federal government economic development program that benefits Black communities. Although this may seem like a good idea, there's a question that still needs to be answered. How will these reparations programs be funded? According to an article from Investopedia.com, it states that deficit spending is the most feasible approach. The taxes needed to support in such an extensive program would be onerous, and there's a precedent for it. In 1833, the United Kingdom passed the Slavery Abolition Act across much of the British Empire. It paid to liberate the slave population by compensating slave owners to the tune of $20 million through deficit spending. Paying reparations out to the descendants of slaves wouldn't just be an apology to them. It would be an apology that go years back into the past to make what was done for the slaves. Thank you.
Point out, it's not important that you stumbled, it's important that you kept going. With the negative cross-examination for 3 minutes, we have Jocelyn McAllister.
Good evening. When the African Americans were first brought over to what is now the United States, according to reparations.com.org, about 4 million Africans and their descendants were enslaved. As of 2020, the population of African Americans has grown to a whopping 41.6 million people. When asking the question, should the government repay reparations to the descendants of enslaved people, we think that all African Americans are descendants, but this is not true. LA Times states, only those individuals who are able to demonstrate that they are descendants or either an enslaved African American or was a free African American living in the U.S. prior to the 1900s are eligible for monetary reparations. Countless of discretions are and have been put on African Americans, even after slavery. African Americans have dealt with Jim Crow laws, police brutality, and still the exploitation of blacks. So why only single out the descendants of slavery? Trying to prove that you're a descendant of slavery can be fairly difficult. The government has been trying to suppress our knowledge of our history. According to historyhub.history.gov, reading the National Archives document federal records
that identify former slaves and slave owners can be a great way to find your spot. Most African Americans don't even know their great-great-grandmother's name, so how will we find true and relevant information? Reparations.com mentions if you are unable to prove that you're a descendant of those who were enslaved, then you should stop having your hand out. Those who can prove ownership should receive about $11.9 trillion in reparations, which is around only $29,816 per descendant. That amount of money will only last you about a few months in today's economy. So, how do you think reparations should be distributed? Would it be easy to decide who should receive the compensation and how much should they receive?
Thank you, Johnson. With the negative constructive number 2 for 5 minutes, we have Daniela Copeland.
Good evening, everyone. The question I am here to answer today is whether the government should or should not repay reparations to the descendants of enslaved people. My opponents here argue that they should, but I oppose their argument. Here's why. Starting off with a little history, 20 Africans were taken from their homeland and were brought to Virginia back in 1619. There in Virginia, they were sold into slavery. As time passed, the number of slaves in America decreased, but around the year 1830, the idea of the abolishment of slavery came up. This idea was turned into the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment was passed on January 31st in 1865 and is known as the amendment that freed enslaved people. GilderLehrman.org mentions that about 4 million slaves were freed all around America that day. This could have been seen as some form of reparation for enslaved people and their descendants because they no longer had to enslave for the right race. Another thing the government may have perceived as a form of reparations was the 14th Amendment establishment. This amendment is the reason why not only African Americans, but other minority groups like Latinos, Asians, and indigenous people are able to have equal rights with white Americans. Carrie Blazina and Kiana Cox are researchers for Pew Research Center, and they conducted a survey on the thoughts of U.S. adults on whether the descendants of enslaved people should or should not receive reparations. Blazina and Cox also asked questions pertaining to the factors that could have influenced each subject's decision. The two reported when a group of U.S. adults were asked if the legacy of slavery influences the position of Black Americans in the country today, 4 out of 10 said that it didn't. This means 40% of the subjects think slavery has no effect on the world today. But before you focus on that percentage, ask yourself, what might be the reason these people think this? Well, consider this. If 300 to 400 years have passed and Black Americans are improving and receiving the things that their ancestors once fought for, then it looks as if slavery doesn't have much of an effect now. Also, if you take a look at the world today, there isn't one person alive that is responsible for slavery. So why must a generation that has nothing to do with slavery be put further in debt because of reparations? Not only will paying reparations to the descendants of enslaved people put our country in more debt, but it will bring division in race. When paying reparations, will they be given to all African Americans or only to the descendants? If the descendants are being paid reparations, but other African Americans aren't, nothing but problems will spark. To prevent debt and division, reparations shouldn't be paid at all. And still, if reparations are paid, it wouldn't erase the fact that Africans were enslaved. Coleman Hughes, an undergraduate philosophy major at Columbia University at the time, argued at a 2019 U.S. congressional hearing that being paid reparations would make oneself a victim. So why would the descendants be paid reparations if they were victims of slavery themselves? Even Bayard Rustin, who was a friend of Martin Luther King Jr., told New York Times in 1969, if my great-grandfather picked cotton for 50 years, then he may deserve money. But he's dead and gone, and nobody owes me anything. This statement helps argue that the descendants of the enslaved people shouldn't be paid reparations simply because they were never slaves. Therefore, reparations should not be paid because it will affect our nation economically, and it will also be given to those who consider themselves as victims of something they're not.
With the affirmative cross-examination for 3 minutes, we have Tatiana Kelly.
Good evening. While our opponents continue to provide you with information as to why we don't deserve reparations for Black Americans is a continuous issue that demands deep examination. This affirmative cross-examination presents a compelling argument for why reparations are necessary to address historical injustices and systematic inequalities that continue to impact Black communities. Following slavery, Black Americans face segregation, discrimination, and violence, perpetuating economic and social disparities. Redlining, segregation laws, and discriminatory policies systematically disadvantage Black communities economically and socially. Black households have significantly less wealth compared to white households, largely due to historical injustices and ongoing discrimination in employment, housing, and education. Black workers continue to face wage disparities, with Black men and women earning less than their white counterparts for similar, if not the same work. Black entrepreneurs and businesses encounter barriers to accessing capital, limiting economic mobility and growth opportunities. The legacy of slavery and systematic racism has caused profound intergenerational trauma within Black communities, impacting mental health and well-being. Reparations serve as a means of acknowledgement of the atrocities committed against Black Americans and recognizing the contributions to American society. Reparations can contribute to healing and reconciliation by addressing historical injustices and working towards a more equitable society. Reparations should encompass financial compensation, investment in education, healthcare, housing, and community development, as well as initiatives to address systematic racism. Establishing a commission to investigate and document the full extent of historical injustices against Black Americans can provide a foundation for reparations and reconciliation efforts. Reparation programs must be transparent, accountable, and subject to oversight to ensure that they effectively address the needs of Black communities and promote long-term equity. Reparations for Black Americans are not only a historical injustice, but also a necessary step towards addressing systematic inequalities and building a more just and equitable society. Through acknowledgement and restitution and reconciliation, reparations can contribute to healing the wounds of the past and creating a more inclusive future for all Americans. Thank you.
Now we will have a team conference for 2 minutes.
All right.
Those 2 minutes start now. We'll continue now with the negative rebuttal number 1 for 3 minutes. We have Ahmad Kramudi.
Good evening. It is important to approach the topic of reparations for Black people with sensitivity and understanding of historical and social context. The call for reparations stems from centuries of oppression and exploitation experienced by African American communities. From the horrific actions of slavery to the legacy of segregation and racism. The injustices inflicted upon Black individuals and communities have left deep wounds that continue to reverberate today. However, the issue of reparations is extremely complex, with valid arguments on both sides of the debate. Some argue that providing reparations to Black people is necessary for steps towards solving past injustices and addressing ongoing inequalities in today's society. These arguments are shaped by the economic disparities, racial discrimination, and lack of generational wealth that continue to affect Black communities today. On the other hand, some people oppose the idea of reparations for Black people. This is for various reasons, including not limited to concerns about fairness, potential for further social divide, and reparations already being paid. The 14th Amendment states, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States." This can be seen as reparations for slavery because it eliminated discriminatory laws against Blacks and provided Black rights. Another argument against reparations is that it would be difficult to determine who will receive compensation and how much they shall receive. The descendants of slaves may be several generations from the actual victims of slavery, making it challenging to establish a clear distribution of reparations. Also, something to ponder is how would mixed-race people get reparations? Would they only receive half of the entire payment? Or outside slaves versus inside slaves? Or even tortured slaves versus favored ones? Do they both get the same share? Or does it differ due to experience? This will cause an uproar in communities all over, which as an effect would cause further divide in society. While some may say that there is already a divide in races and that reparations would fix this, there is evidence to debunk this statement. According to Dr. Coleman Hughes, an African-American writer who graduated from Columbia University, giving back reparations would divide people because it would be putting a price on slavery and the people that experienced it. While it may help for a little, it would eventually cause concerns about other groups of people getting some form of rectification for certain events. Even though some groups have gotten reparations for events in the past, for example, survivors of the Holocaust, Native Americans, and Japanese Americans after World War II, it was paid in a timely manner and to the direct group of people that experienced it. It has almost been 200 years since the abolishment of slavery. This is unfair to the previous groups.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the negative rebuttal number 2 and closing statement for 3 minutes, we have Sinai Dunbar.
Nelson Mandela once stated, "Money won't create success, the freedom to make it will." We have been granted the freedom to curate our own success that doesn't rely on the lousy efforts of everyone else, because it's not up to everyone else to formulate the life you want to live. Although the assistance from reparations would be nice, isn't the whole concept of providing reparations to Black descendants of enslaved people very demeaning? If we allow the government to determine not only our individual value, but the value of our community, wouldn't we essentially be telling them to label and price our worth once again, while also telling them to put a price on generational trauma? If we bring money in particular to the conversation, this is moved from coalition to yet another transaction. Coalition is defined by the Cambridge Dictionary as the joining together of different political parties or groups for a particular purpose. Everyone in this room should know that they are valued and that the color of their skin does not deserve to be placed on the market for a 400-year concession. This country has consistently shown us what they think of our liberation. They have shown us by continuing to add to the 240 names to the Say Their Names website of Black lives that were taken by the same law enforcers and lawmakers we are asking not only money from, but an ounce of empathy as well. These are the same people who have shown us 240 plus times just how much they value this community. There is and never will be a monetary value that can be placed on decades of trauma. The compensation of other marginalized groups does not erase the traumatic events of their history, so we shouldn't let it happen to ours. As stated by my teammate Denilah, reparations by definition are only given to victims.
Contrary to what my opponents believe, we are not entitled to collect on what's due and owed to the people who are beaten, raped, subject to unrelenting labor, and simply deprived of basic human rights. This is not about me, nor you, or you, but about those who are in bondage. At what price do we value the 14,500,000 kidnapped men, women, and children stripped of their identity? If we place our energy into a series of empty apologies, we dim the light on other issues America faces with social justice. It is argued that because of slavery, we are simply just behind while playing a never-ending game of catch-up. Well, if we want to play catch-up, let's focus on the issues we can legitimately fix. In our very own 65,758 square mile long state, we have issues affecting our community. We can fix these without the requirement of asking for money or a well overdue apology. NAACP.org writes that Florida has a goal to erase Black history and restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Florida schools. So are we going to let them? The lack of action taken by the government doesn't eliminate the history that courses through our blood. The U.S. is already $34.4 trillion in debt, according to Treasury.gov. We know our community is far more valuable than to be recipients of historical amnesia debt money, or land that never technically belonged to the founders of this country in the first place. Thank you.
And now, because of my mistake, I jumped one ahead, and we need to have the affirmative rebuttal number 1 from Marley Poole.
Good evening. Our opponents think that reparations are difficult because of race and who would pay. I remind the audience that the British paid slave owners to end slavery in England. Haiti paid France to end slavery. Both took over 120 years to pay, and the slave owners' descendants benefited for decades. Additionally, I would like to disprove the thoughts of those who believe that reparations would be too expensive. It is believed by most Black adults that reparations should not be paid in the form of cash anyway. They believe they should be repaid in the forms of educational scholarships, financial assistance with starting or improving a business, or financial assistance for remodeling or buying a home. As of 2021, 81% of Black registered voters believe that the United States government should be responsible for a payment. 76% believe that the responsibility should fall upon the hands of the businesses and banks that profited from slavery. 63% of Black voters think that the colleges and universities that benefited from slavery should be held accountable, and 60% say that the descendants of the families who engaged in the slave trade should be the ones to repay the descendants of the enslaved, according to a study conducted by the Pew Research Center. I would also like to point out that the wrongdoings inflicted upon Black people did not end when the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. The proclamation was announced on January 1st, 1863. The slaves were not officially free until June 19, 1865. For 2.5 years, there were still slaves working without knowledge of their freedom. Segregation, the separation of groups of people with differing characteristics, was endured by newly emancipated slaves and the descendants of slaves for nearly a decade. Black people were denied things such as rights against voting, getting or holding certain jobs, receiving an education, and rights to a fair trial. They were also denied entry into theaters, hotels, and restaurants, and if they were permitted to enter, they were separated and served last. The education that they were able to receive was inferior to those of the whites. They had low-quality facilities, supplies, and teachers who were underpaid. Just remember that reparations would in fact not be too expensive, and the wrongs that were imposed upon Black people should be accounted for. Thank you.
And finally, with the affirmative rebuttal and closing statement, Isaiah Reese.
Good evening, everyone. As I already beat and close our affirmative position, allow me to restate for the record our affirmative position. My team has been clear of the pros for reparations. Slavery led to giant disparities in wealth that should be addressed with reparations. Ta-Nehisi Coates, author and correspondent for the Atlantic magazine, explains that by 1836, more than 6 million, almost half the economic activity in the United States was derived directly or indirectly from the cotton produced in this country. descendants of slavery do deserve the reparation, the benefits their ancestors could not, because the descendants' lives have been directly impacted by the lack of benefiting from the economic prosperities their ancestors delivered. Slavery left African American communities at the mercy of the slave health deficit, which should be addressed with reparation. Access to health care began from the end of slavery through much of the 20th century. African Americans have had a long-term health effect of slavery based on the racism that existed post-slavery. Thankfully, the Affordable Care Act did take a step in the right direction to help African Americans. However, the government can go further, providing additional health care availability to African Americans to correct the long-term effect. My point is how I stated reparations would be too expensive and difficult to implement. Nobody said that when the Japanese Americans was paid for reparation. What about the reparation of the victims of the Tuskegee study, which infected 399 black men, and they were paid $10 million? Or how about in the state of North Carolina set up $10 million in reparation for the estimated 7,600 people who stayed forcibly sterilized between 1929 and 1974, or the German government, which has paid $89 billion to victims of the Nazi and their dependent from 1952 to now. And then finally, South Africa paid $85 million in reparation to the victims of apartheid crimes. Can this country do it? Yes, it can. Will this country do it? It really should. Thank you.
Let's give another big round of applause. Now we'll excuse them as the judges. They collect their scoring, and we'll start to. You'll have the middle school come up with them. Okay, you'll have the middle school come up with them as we collect the scores and find out where winners are tonight. But after they collect scores, we want to hear a little bit from our judges to get what they thought about it. What did you think about the debate, first of all? Excellent as always. Let's begin with Dr. Amy Falbo, just to get your comments on what you thought about what you heard tonight.
Hi. Y'all are amazing, if nobody has told y'all that. I would not have been doing this in middle school or high school, I'll tell you that. I would have been a little bit too nervous, so you couldn't see that at all. And I think you should just give yourselves a great round of applause for the research that y'all done, for the practice that you've given out time for. Y'all are really amazing. I don't know if y'all heard earlier, I work at Ecker College, and so I would also, if any of y'all are interested in college a few years from now, please come and see me because I'd love to help you. And I'd love to have some of y'all in our classrooms debating and challenging some of our professors. I would love that.
Yes, indeed. Bravo to you all. Let's give them another big round of applause. Discussion. I think every one of us who were listening learned something to help us make more complete arguments and expressions of our thoughts about these two critical issues. My one recommendation is remember, young people, that you have an audience. And so the margin of separation is very thin, but those who had gestures and made eye contact with the audience actually excelled slightly beyond the group as a base. But tonight was awesome. Really appreciate you, and we're excited about the future that you'll make. Now you made these arguments, that you'll be involved in implementing these changes as we need to have them in our society. Thank you so much.
Major Anthony McCoy.
Another mic. Thank you. I am very, did he come up? Yeah. All right, thank you. I'm very impressed with all. I can tell you guys worked really, really hard and it shows. Keep up the hard work. Never give up, because I'm proud of you. All of you.
Joe Norwood.
Good evening to everyone. Yeah. Good evening to everyone, and I've been doing this for quite a while, and I tell you, I get an education each time. I find myself going to work the next day, challenging my instructors, and I tell you all, I got education from both of you on both topics, education one-on-one, and just keep doing what you're doing. The research was there, as we can tell, and just keep positive attitude about the things, and again, I learned a lot tonight. Thank you.
Finally, Brandon Williams.
I just want to say you all are extraordinary. If anybody asks you what's your talent, if you don't know something, I tell you, all of you are great communicators. So if anybody asks you what's your talent, that's one thing you can tell them. I mean, just the vocabulary that you all use, I guarantee you, those sheets of paper with your lines on it, if you randomly handed it to one of us in here, we would stumble all over it. And that just shows how great you all are. I tell you, Isaiah and Ahmad, you all holding it down for the brothers. It was just the two of y'all. That's what college looks like. If you go to UCF, it's going to be like 5-1. So you'll get an idea. You know, as you move up in the ranks, we're outnumbered, but appreciate you guys holding it down. And Ms. Jordan, I tell you what, the power of communication, I was convicted when you said we need to decolonize our mind. It really took me back to when I was in Italy a few years ago, and a Kenyan man gave me a hard time for not speaking any African languages. So that just shows the power that you all have in what you say and how you truly can change the world with your voice. So I pray that you all don't take that lightly. I pray you all, since you know you're great communicators, have something to say. Travel the world, read a lot, get a relationship with God so that y'all can use your voices to change the world. So I appreciate it.
As a journalist, we've always understood the importance of debate. Now, I was on a debate team when I was in high school, and the skills you're learning right now, you're going to use for the rest of your life. It's very important on anything that you learn and anything that you hold close to your heart is to be able to debate it and understand it. Not only understand your side, but understand the other side as well. That makes you a very good debater. With that, we have our first score, the first winner in the middle school. This is kind of close here too. Out of a possible 600 points. The team with 541 points is the team of Williams Miller.
I don't know who won. No one looks excited.
Come up and get your envelope, and then I want you to stand. We have Ms. Janae Skipper and Mr. Bruce Moody. Standing in the center, and you all can take a picture with them. Ready to go? Yeah. So we have Ms. Renaya Stokes. Ms. Madison Bell. Reese. Kennedy Smith. Princeton Palmerback. And Mr. Princeton is actually in high school, but he was a soldier because we had too many high school students, and he agreed to be on the middle school team. So and Lanaya McQueen. Lanaya Lindsay. Kayla McQueen. Solomon Reese. Bernard. And Lyric Bird. Give them all a hand.
All right,
Let's give both teams a hand.
I'm told I'm going to stretch you a little bit, so let's talk about if we can, with the winners. Let's have it over here just a quick second. I'm going to do what I do. This going off, and I'm going to walk around. So congratulations, what do you think of your team?
So they are the speakers, I am not. But they did an amazing job. It was hard work. Some nights I had to get on them, but getting on them, it persevered, as you see. We took it home. To Mr. James' team, they did an amazing job as well. So good job to all of you.
Let's talk a little bit with the winning team over here.
Step up.
Just a little bit, what did you learn from this whole process of doing it?
That you really just have to work with your team sometimes, and just teamwork is just everything.
What about you guys? Talk about the study. What did you have to, how much did you have to study? What did you have to learn? And what did you learn about what you had to do in this debate?
Get up there.
We did a lot of background research, and then as a team formulated what we're going to write, giving constructive criticism.
He was the one getting all
You were getting all the constructive criticism? Why were you getting all the constructive criticism?
I feel like opinion is important. It needs to be-
There it is.
All right. Right on that. So what did you learn from all of this?
I learned how to work with my teammates, and in the end, it's important, and teamwork is important. So that's all.
Now, notice there were several people with similar last names. Were there brother sisters here?
Yes.
Okay. I want to know what was like in that one. Okay. That way. What are the two siblings together?
Step up, right?
Me and Bernard. So what was that like with you and Bernard in the same house?
Well, it was crazy because he would always like trash talk and be like, "Oh yeah, well we're gonna win, and we're gonna beat you, and we're gonna do this." And then he did it last year too, and then we ended up winning, and then we won again. So we just proved.
So what did you say to that?
We proved him wrong.
All right. Okay. What you got to say?
She always trash talk me to be honest.
That's all right. I got a sister too. You know, this is going to keep on going, isn't it? Okay. We'll see this next year. Well, thank you all very much. Very, very much. Abbott should have come back. Yeah. So how many of you was this your first time debating? All right, what'd you think about it? Thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you think? Thumbs up. You're kind of sideways. All right, but how many have been their second time? Second time, okay. Any third time? Wow. Second time, third time, fourth time. Do we have any fourth? Okay, I want to find out from you. Okay, good. Any fifth? Okay, sixth. So you've been here. This is the fifth time. What do you think about this process since you began?
It has definitely evolved, and I've been on both the middle and high school team on both sides of the argument. It allowed me to see both sides of the argument, and even though the debate, it allows me to spend my argumenting skills outside of it. And I don't like arguing, but when it comes comes to debate, I like doing the debate because it not only allows me to expand my knowledge, but it allows me to apprehend new skills.
You've gotten a better debater now. And then, what was it, you, 5 years? 5 years. Yep. Tell me what you thought about, just the number of years you've been doing this and what you've learned from this.
As y'all can see, I studied tonight, but the experience is actually not bad. Like my sister said, I love debating, even though I may not look like it, but I love debating, and like it's fun because like you get to see both sides of the argument. You get to see both the middle school and high school, and it's kind of like, how am I saying? Like in school, you write an argument, an essay, you like to debate your side, and you gain more knowledge doing it, and it's fun doing the research because you can build your own essay, argument, and yeah, prove your point, get your point across.
Right. That's right. I've said it all the time. That doesn't matter. People even forget that. So you did a great job. Thank you all again so much. Now, drum roll for the high school debate winners. Okay, yeah, drum roll right here. The winner with a score of 560 out of a possible 600. Not staying right there. The team, the negative. David. And we're going to say that the other one's which is that the team in the affirmative had a score of 506 out of 600, which was really good. And I didn't get to mention also the affirmative, Jackson, they were 488 out of 600. So very good scores for everyone else so far. Congratulations to you.
All right, as I call your name, Sanai Dunbar, Amon Company, Nyla Copeland, Joseph McAllister, Jordan Moore, and Emerson Jackson. The other team, Kiana Chambers. Okay. Isaiah Reese. Marley Poole. Tatiana Shelley. Brianna Chambers. And Jasmine Everhart. Let's get both teams. So now we will have, okay.
We did. We got big old chances. Now get out of the picture.
Good evening again. First of all, I'd like to thank the parents of these brilliant children that are up on the stage, and also all the other family members who came out to support. Secondly, I'd like to thank our moderator, Mr. Pettiford, our judges. Also, I'd like to thank the ladies, Ms. Zeta Upsilon, Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Also like to thank my brothers, the men of the Ada Row Chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated as well. Supporting us. And to the winners, because you all are winners, I'm talking to all of you. You guys did an amazing job. Continue to be great. Don't let anything stop you. I'm proud of you all.
May Skipper, and again, I am the president of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Zeta Upsilon Omega chapter. I cannot be prouder of our youth and all that they have accomplished here tonight. It is said that roughly 75% of people have a fear of public speaking. Not only did our young people accomplish this, they did so with clarity and conviction. So please join me again with an astounding applause to congratulate our imagine the future of these socially conscious young people who have educated themselves and us on global issues. They have heightened level of awareness and critical thinking and doesn't mind displaying it clearly through their civic duties. So congratulations to them once again. I too want to take a point of privilege to acknowledge the ladies of the Zeta Upsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority once again, and to the brothers of the Eta Rho chapter of Omega Psi Phi. Thank you for all that our combined organizations do to help our young people. But if we all can join in a rowdy thank you to our first Vice President, Dr. Delphinia Davis. Dr. You never disappoint. Thank you for your continuous efforts. But more importantly, I'd like to thank all of our committees, our students, our parents, coaches, and judges. In addition, I would like to thank our funding partners, the Youth Development Foundation of Pinellas County and JWB. Had it not been for their financial support and efforts, the journey here would be a little tougher. So thank you to our funding partners. And as usual, thank you for your continued support and participation. With that being said, have a wonderful evening, safe travels, and see you next year.